Hello, I wanted to share something that I'm working on at the moment. It's this little patchwork piece, and the reason I've done it is because I'm doing this body of work on Eleanor Glanville, who was a naturalist in the 17th century, and it's very unusual for a woman, and she has a butterfly named after her. I'll link a video that tells you a bit more about her if you're interested. But because she was living at that time and because of her class, she would have probably done textiles and embroidery herself. So I managed to track down, this is the 1718 coverlet, which is the oldest quilt that is known sort of intact in a collection. And somebody has done this lovely book where they talk about all the techniques and all the different shapes that were used. So my idea was to do something similar on a much smaller scale, and incorporating, although I'm using the same techniques, I'm incorporating a few more modern things as well. Plus I wanted to get in something about Eleanor and her life as well. So I've made this little patchwork, and the fabric is all my hand-dyed bamboo silk. It's a bamboo and silk mix, which makes it a little bit easier to work with than 100% silk. And it's come out with I've got these beautiful shades because I've used plants from my garden to dye them with. So it would be very similar to what would have been used then. And I've based my pattern on some of the patterns in this book. And I've used this very old technique called English paper piecing, which I've used before, and it's still a really good way of doing patchwork. And you can see if I show the back, and all the pieces are shapes cut out of paper, and then you stitch each piece of fabric. You cut the fabric to the shape of the paper, but just a little bit bigger, and then you tack it all around, and this has still got all my tacking in it. And then you stitch the pieces together, and I'll put some footage in of me doing that. And it's been a really lovely project. I've really enjoyed it because I mostly do machine sewing these days, and just to do a bit of hand sewing, you can sit in front of the telly and do it, as long as it's something you don't have to read the subtitles for, and carry on sewing. So I've really enjoyed it. And I've done a lot of checkerboard pattern in it because the name fritillary actually comes from a word that means checkerboard. And if you look at the butterfly, it has got sort of that pattern. It's much easier to see on the flower, the fritillary flower, because that's got very distinct checkerboard. So a lot of my motifs have been that, and I've done bigger pieces and just several shapes. And because with the original quilt, this coverlet here, the paper was actually left, sometimes the paper was taken out, sometimes it was left in, and it's so interesting when they leave it in because you've got, documents or pieces of paper that, we don't have that much paper from around then that would have just been household papers. So I've got some of my fabric that I've used stencils on to almost recreate the squares where the fabric might have worn away and you just see the writing underneath. And the reason this one's a little faded here is because this piece I'm going to put a butterfly here, which I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do, but in the same way, similar to how I've done these flowers. So these are thrift flowers, which are one of the flowers that the butterflies get nectar from. And I've put some rather basic caterpillar shapes, and I'm going to do some more embroidery. And I'm going to put some more motifs on a couple of these other squares, and then do the big butterfly in the middle. And then I'll take all the tacking out, and I'm going to mount it onto a board. And this will be part of my exhibition all about Eleanor Glanville. And that's going to be in May in the Cornerstone Gallery in Didcot, and you'll probably see more about it in the lead up to it. I went there this week to see the gallery, and it's a really lovely space, so I'm quite excited about it. So I hope you enjoyed that little insight into what I'm working on, and that you'll join me again soon.